Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question. Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-on for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. Graylog elevates enterprise-level cybersecurity through its comprehensive SIEM, centralized log management, and API security solutions. Built on the Graylog platform, Graylog Security combines SIEM, security analytics, threat detection, and incident response capabilities. Unlike traditional SIEMs, which offer complex and costly setups, Graylog Security simplifies security and operational challenges with an optimal blend of licensing, people, and infrastructure costs. To see a demo, visit securityweekly.com/Graylog.
Make sure you subscribe to the Below the Surface podcast by Eclipsium in partnership with CRA. We've had the pleasure of speaking with some amazing guests, including Zeno Kova, Richard Hughes, Vincent Zimmer, and more. We discuss topics related to firmware and supply chain security, uncovering those pesky vulnerabilities that lie, well, below the surface in your environments. You can find all the episodes and subscribe by visiting eclipsium.com/podcast or searching for Below the Surface in your favorite podcast catcher.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're always looking for great guests for all the Security Weekly shows, and you can submit your suggestions by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. I have not checked the submitted guests in a while, and I probably need to do that tonight or tomorrow. So get your suggestions in there, and I promise I will look at them. Otherwise, I get yelled at by our executive producer. So be rest assured somebody will look at it.
Which is not me, to be clear.
It's Renee. Yeah, Renee
Yes.
does that.
Totally.
All right, now for the Enterprise Security
Weekly.
Weekly.
Making sure nobody gives me, and I do plenty of stuff on my own. This one's not on me.
Yeah, Katie is not tasked with pestering me to do things at all.
No, that is not my job anymore.
So the news time, you can check out securityweekly.com/ESW371. That is the number of this episode. If you want to follow along as we go through the news or for links to the articles we're covering. And as you might guess, you can just enumerate that number to look at any of our show notes. It's always securityweekly.com/ESW and then the 3-digit number of the show. All right. Let's see. So I put a few funding items in here because there was a big one, Abnormal. Abnormal's a pretty big security vendor. Heard a lot of good things about the latest round of security vendors that are out there. Just a lot more effective at stopping phishing emails and BEC emails and stuff like that than like the old school technology out there. And some of it's been getting acquired into the Mimecast and the Proofpoint. So it's interesting. We're starting to see this, this latest generation of email security vendors acquired. But at this point, Abnormal's got a $250 million Series D that values them at $5.1 billion. That's an expensive acquisition at this point.
That is an expensive acquisition. And, they're a company that's been around for a while, and they've done some really good things, and they've shifted slightly over the years to improve their technology. And it is, there's always this debate, are we going to get acquired? Are we going to IPO? What's going to happen? Are we going to acquire companies so we become this massive platform play? But they seem to want to really continue to focus on their core. They really seem to want to make this, they've doubled their revenue, I think, in a year. I believe that's what I read recently. And so they're hitting the market hard. This is a huge problem that, despite all our efforts, despite all the tooling that seems to be out there, it continues to affect every company, social engineering, phishing. I get garbage all the time that I look at and I'm like, how did this get through my spam filter? And most of it is obvious, but every once in a while, and all you need is one not so obvious thing to catch somebody, and they've got access. Or Abnormal seems to be doing really good things. I think this is a really interesting take on it. A few years ago we talked about human security. There's even a company now called Human Security. But I
used
know
to be White Ops.
Right. I know that Abnormal puts a lot of effort into the psychology behind how we work and the different personas of how we work. So, good on them. It's a lot of funding, but, hopefully it's not, I always get nervous when I see companies raising too much money, but I'm sure they're putting it to good use.
Yeah, and it is. It's not a venture round. It looks like a PE firm that did the at least led the investment here. So I'm not entirely sure what that means. Usually when we see a PE firm come in, it's not an investment; it's an acquisition. So, and I'm not familiar with Wellington Management, which is the firm that led the round. So yeah, I don't know. We need, sometimes I need a Tyler to answer questions for me, but we don't have a Tyler this week. Yeah, I don't know how well he knows PE firms, so I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. It's good to see this market growing. It was an area, and there's still a lot of vendors out there that desperately need this kind of help. Yeah, I mentioned it in the show notes, but when I create a new Microsoft 365 account, it puts like everything it puts into the junk box is 100% not junk, and then 100% of the stuff that should be in the junk folder goes to my inbox. I'm like, how is this so bad? I don't understand it.
Yeah,
And I understand if you pay extra, it works better, but like why? Like the first thing I have to always do on a Microsoft 365 account is turn off the junk filter because I will miss important emails because it will always 100% of the time put important emails in the junk folder.
Right. Yeah. It's I got some things this morning, welcome to this, that, or the other thing, and I'm like, I don't even remember what it is, but it was I remember because I looked at it with my unglassed eyes when I got up, and it was a category. It was like automotive, something like that. I just absolutely, in no universe, would care about.
Right. I get a lot of that stuff.
And
I get a lot of
it's
pitches.
like really, is that still coming? We can't even stop the low-hanging fruit. We've got to do better. So
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of gray area there too, because a lot of the spam and stuff I get, like it gets to be harder and harder to tell between, somebody legitimately pitching me on an investment and like a Kickstarter thing and something that's a complete scam. There's just so much, email is just so ubiquitously used to pitch people on this stuff that it's just really hard to. I tend to just ignore it all because that's the
one
only
thing that
safe
is
approach.
not really related to this, but sort of related to it because it's spam more than it is, any kind of malicious content. But I keep getting all of these messages through LinkedIn about my quote new position. And we talked about this last week too. I try to be polite and write back in cases where I can, but then I end up inadvertently having these people think that if I responded once, I'm going to continue to respond to the requests for email addresses, phone numbers, and addresses for my colleagues who handle the things that they haven't even bothered to take the time
Addresses.
to research with me. Well, but I thought you were the blah, blah, blah from your title in LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, you didn't read very far because I don't have that title. And I would love for somebody to come up with, so it is tangentially related, for somebody to come up with some way to have these automatic replies, or for you to be able to click something that says, all right, I've been polite. This was spam in the first
It's the
place.
block button. I had to do that the other day.
But I don't want to necessarily block somebody if I guess I feel bad if it's, just a block. If they've only written me a couple times, if they keep coming back, or if they do anything offensive immediately. But there has to be some way to report it, to say, listen, this person is using LinkedIn, and there's nothing wrong with using LinkedIn as a prospecting tool. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to do your research. And I wish there was some other type of filter that could filter it out for me at a certain point beyond blocking.
Yeah, I because I blocked him, I can't find it now. I was just looking for it and just realized, of course, I'm not going to find it.
Of course
But
not.
yeah, somebody kept trying to, it was like a recruiter, trying to get me to hire, do you need some programmers? And I was like, no, I'm an independent consultant. I have no staff. I don't have a company.
But
So
if
I'm
you want somebody
not a good
to
lead
come
for
in,
you.
if you want somebody to
Second
come and do
time
my work
comes
for
back with the same
free,
pitch. Second time comes back with the same pitch. Do you
oh
need
my
developers?
God.
Third time, and I repeat the same thing. Like, please take me off whatever list this is. And this is LinkedIn DM, so it's not cheap for him to, like, emails free for you to send, but with the paid version of LinkedIn, you only get so many in-mails, right? They count
Right.
them. And so I feel like I'm doing them a favor by replying and saying, hey, like, this is a waste of your money to hit me. And third time, I just blocked them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I mean, it's tough on the marketing side, especially companies that do cold outreach. But it just ends up making the job, because those strategies are always changing. It makes the job on the security side even more difficult.
Yeah. And again, that's a little bit different because it's not malicious content, but it's still
It's a gray
unwanted
area. Mhm.
content.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, what are we worried about malicious stuff for? Disruption of operations, loss of productivity. What
Right.
is this stuff doing? Disruption, loss of productivity. So,
Yeah.
should we
That's
even
true.
distinguish between it? If it's wasting our time, if it's getting in the way of us doing our jobs,
Yeah.
the outcome is pretty much the same. The intent doesn't really matter
I guess
at the end
that's
of the
true.
day. So yeah, some funding here to AI companies. One is called Protect AI, which I did not have on my list because they're a little bit older than the other companies. I started building a list of just ones that we mentioned on this show, raising funds in the last year or so. So they just raised Protect AI just raised a $60 million Series B, and they have a ton of products already. They've got a list of 5 products. And along with this, part of the reason they have that many is they acquired a company called Side Labs, which focuses on automating LLM red teaming. So just what we were talking with Amanda about, except they try to automate it. So yeah, fairly mature AI company, and it's kind of interesting because it's a mix of stuff with different buyers, right? Like they have a product that attempts to protect an LLM that you might bake into your own application that you're building, which is, I would think, a different buyer from somebody purchasing a automated red teaming product.
Yeah, I mean they position it as AI SPM, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, AI security posture management.
yeah,
Which I mean, basically, what they're trying to convey there is they do a lot of things.
they do a
They're
lot of
pulling a lot
things. Yeah,
of things into
the
a platform.
SPM bucket has been
But if you do
expanded.
that, you typically want a single buyer. You don't want to sell these things ad hoc, right? You want to sell them as a big package.
Well, that is, that is the theory, but I think companies also still buyer companies still are a little And it's our fault as vendors. It's completely our fault and analysts' fault. I'm going to throw us both under the bus by creating these terms that are meant to be these, big bucket catch-all terms, these umbrella terms, but yet different vendor companies co-opt these terms to fit their solutions. And sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it's a piece of the puzzle. In this case, it looks like they went the opposite direction, using the term to envelop more than maybe is practical. And with different buyers, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because it's hard enough to get one buyer on the phone, from what I understand, versus they talk about in sales, bringing people into the conversation, getting champions. That's hard enough, much less having different line items for different buyers in different parts of the org, and then coordinating that through procurement if there is so.
Let me, I'm going to close this door over here because it is playing havoc with my camera, because the sunlight is hitting it directly. But let me get you chatting about, any particular story here. We can come back to fundings that you found interesting that you want to chat about.
Obviously,
it's only going to take me like 10 seconds.
Obviously, the most interesting two to me are number 5, acquisition rumors, and then new staff. SentinelOne names Alex Stamos.
All right, let's go. Start with Tenable then.
All right. So, Tenable is one of the old guard. They've been around forever and ever, and rumors have it, according to a Bloomberg News report and then other outlets that then picked up the news, that Tenable is poking around to see where maybe it can be acquired. It's one of the bigger security companies out there. According to this report, the latest valuation is more than $5 billion. And Tenable, I know that they just started up a new cloud unit. I know, they have old guard technology. They've been, trying to keep up with some of the newer players. Sometimes in security, we don't like to play with the old established players. We want to see what's best. And Tenable has not commented on this. I have no inside baseball. They didn't comment on this particular story. They're not commenting publicly. But if Tenable were to be acquired, that would certainly leave a lot of companies in a weird place, because you never know when there's an acquisition what's going to happen to the core technology. Now, with a company like Tenable that's been around for at least when
early
were
2000s.
Yeah,
so 2003, I think they commercialized it, something like that.
Yeah, at least 15, probably. Probably more. I'm trying to look it up quickly. I don't have it, but it's definitely. That's because I spelled it wrong. I can't talk and write. September 2002. Yeah, so a 22-year-old company. It would definitely. I think the market is going away from the core. We were just talking about AI SPM. I work in the ASPM space. There are a lot of SPMs coming around, and I think as a standalone vulnerability scanner tool, there might just not be a whole lot of interest from the market anymore as we move forward, because everybody is pulling things into one platform, because you can't have this siloed view of what's in the attack surface. You can't have this one scanner view. And even if you integrate it, do you have the normalization capabilities? Even if you have the normalization capabilities, can you correlate the data from that with other tools? Even if you have the correlated data, how do you know what's applicable to you? How is it applicable to you? How are your dependencies? I mean, all these questions that you just can't get. And a company that was built starting in 2002 has a little of that risk of becoming a bolt-on. So what happens
Yeah,
if
no,
it's
I remember
acquired?
advising. I remember advising Rapid7 when I was at when I was an analyst at 451. Telling them, look, Nexpose cannot be your flagship product, for you guys to go forward. That should just be a source of data for whatever your platform or whatever your um, was the term I just used, flagship product
Flagship.
would be. It can't be a scanner. It can't be a sensor, basically. And that's how I think of a scanner. It's just something that gathers data.
Yeah.
Like your flagship product should be something that does something useful with all that data, which kind of led to Chasm, right? This idea that let's take all this data, and there's all these use cases we need this data for. So let's try and get it all in one place and boil the ocean of all these use cases. And I've been waiting for the moment when uh, these kind of converge. I was actually kind of surprised that these split out in the first place. That Chasm became a separate category because it kind of seemed like the natural place where Qualys, Rapid7, and Tenable would go.
And they haven't necessarily.
Yeah, yeah, so it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't know if you mentioned it when you started, but Rapid7 was also rumored to be looking for a buyer. But like 6 or 9 months ago, I think we did talk about it
Yeah.
on the podcast at some point, and nothing came of that. But my prediction is it's inevitable for one of the big three, Qualys, Rapid7, or Tenable, to get mashed up with a Chasm vendor, or as I put it in the show notes, smushed together.
Smooshed.
That's a technical.
Smooshed.
That's the business term for we don't use merge anymore. It's smush.
Well, merge means something slightly different to our dev friends,
Right.
It's
It does.
we don't want to be the ones to muddy the waters with buzzword terms and stuff.
So what timing for Alex Stamos to join SentinelOne right as SentinelOne's primary competitor is in a bit of turmoil, huh? What a funny coincidence.
Ugh,
And
yeah,
I
I
do think
mean,
it's a coincidence.
yeah, no, because I'm sure these kinds of conversations, when you bring in a CISO to your organization, it's not a one interview and done. Even if you're
Yeah.
Alex
It's been
Stamos,
in the works for 6 months, I'm sure. Yeah.
right? Even if you're Alex Stamos, you still have to go through the whole rigmarole, talking to
Well,
everybody, the
especially
exec.
if it's Alex Stamos. Like he's got to get insurance, and
Yeah,
his lawyer's got to look at the contract. Like both sides of a CISO joining a company is a lot of work,
right. I just
from what
meant
I've
from a
heard.
reputation point of view, like,
Right.
oh yeah, if we can get Alex Stamos or, insert, similar type cybersecurity luminaries, if we can get this person, let's get this person, so that decision might be easy. But yeah, the legalities of it, I'm certain he doesn't come in like a recent college grad and is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll accept anything you give me. I'm sure there are
Yeah.
bargaining chips, there are market considerations. Here's what I want to do. Let's make sure this is all kosher. Um, but yeah, this is a big win for SentinelOne, hopefully.
Well, so
Especially
so
as we have so much scrutiny. And I think we
yeah.
talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's so much scrutiny on CISOs. There's so much personal liability now. There's so much
Mhm.
pressure that you would think that some people in this same category would be like, you know what? I've had my run. I don't need the headache. So uh, good on him for taking on this type of challenge. Um, there are a lot of
Yeah.
SentinelOne fans out there.
Yeah, and it's well, it looks like not the first time. Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about this. He was already at SentinelOne.
Yeah,
because SentinelOne acquired the Krebs Stamos group.
right.
And we reported on that, and I completely forgot about that. I just scrolled to that bit, and it reminded me. So yeah,
Right.
he's
Yeah.
moving from
So
chief.
again, I've done this
It's a
before.
lateral move internally.
Yeah.
Yeah, from chief trust officer to CISO. But you know,
Well, lateral-ish, right? With the
movement inside
title.
the company is what I mean. Maybe it's a promotion. I don't know.
Uh, I, I,
It should be a
I,
promotion.
I'm
CISO
more
sounds like
interested
more.
in the visibility, the liability,
Yeah,
that comes along with the title, whether it's a promotion, a lateral move. That's really none of my business. I don't care. Whatever works for him works for him. But just the stuff that gets put on you when you take that title.
yeah. Yeah, so I think it's good timing because trust is the thing that CrowdStrike is struggling with right now, and having a well-known CISO with a long past as a CISO for some very big organizations, you step up and take that position can probably only help uh, uh, improve trust with SentinelOne at a key moment. So doesn't
I
hurt them,
have,
I don't think.
in fairness, I have heard, yes, there are some people who are very, very critical right now of what's going on at CrowdStrike. But I have
Mhm.
also heard a lot of kudos to George Kurtz for showing up, especially this week in Las Vegas, tackling it head on, having a presence, not shying away from it,
Yeah,
and
being a leader.
being a leader. I mean, the reality is that was a big, it was big. And it would be super easy to hide behind the lawyers, to hide behind the press teams,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so people are giving him some praise, which really speaks well of him and his leadership. Um, and let's just be honest, something's going to happen in a week or two that's going to be headline grabbing, and people are going to get
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah. And we'll forget about it. Well, some of us will forget about it. Delta's not going to forget about it.
Well, Delta's in a little bit of a world of hurt right now, right? Because they're suing CrowdStrike because of their downtime essentially and the revenue loss. But they were
Yeah,
the
half a
last
billion dollars in 5 days
but they were the
was their
last
losses.
company, last airline to be able to fix it. And
Yeah.
the big question is, and CrowdStrike's
They,
lawyers are right. Why did it take you this long when it took everybody else that long?
well, and we all know, like it's a poorly kept secret that Delta's got a lot of tech debt. So yeah, they mentioned there were 40,000 Windows servers that had to be all with BitLocker enabled that had to be manually recovered one by one. I mean that sounds like 20 years ago. Like who has 40,000 Windows servers anymore? Like ever heard of, cloud infrastructure and containers and, you know, like for a company that big, like there are definitely better ways to handle infrastructure that make you more resilient and make it easier to recover more quickly. Um, but I mean, uh, you know, that doesn't remove their point that this is something that was out of their control and shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Well, I guess
So it'll
it
be
gets
interesting
to
to see how the courts handle it.
I guess it gets down to the shared responsibility model. Now I know shared responsibility model traditionally applies to cloud services, cloud infrastructure. But the reality is, whenever you use any tool, you are also responsible for the use of it, and the fact that they did not future proof in any way by upgrading their own infrastructure. I mean, if I were a lawyer, which I'm not, that would be part of my argument. You have a responsibility, like you said, tech debt, to keep up with what's current. You have to do threat modeling. if you're threat modeling, like for instance, there's a house at the end of my street, which is my street's not like the fanciest street in the world, but it's certainly not the worst street in the world. And there's a house that quite literally looks like it's going to fall down. And whose fault is that? Right? Are you going to go blame the builders from 150 years ago because the houses on our street are over 150
Right.
years old? Everybody else, there is not a week that goes by where somebody on the street is not doing home improvement because your
Yeah.
house needs it. So what are you going to do? You're going to go sue the builder from 150 years ago because you failed to waterproof your basement. You failed to replace rotting wood. You failed. And so there is a little bit of that, and that's what I would be arguing if I were their lawyer. Again, if you have a technology that's still in use and it's still supported, then it gets into a grayer area. But yeah, the other airlines managed to upgrade. Delta took the option to save money on their infrastructure and stick with antiquated systems that are probably kludgy and hard to manage. And that
Might be more
part,
expensive to go that route.
that part's on
To
them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if more details of Delta's infrastructure come out of it when it hits the courts and discovery and all that stuff. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But it sounds like it's definitely going to the courts, and they're not going to be the only one taking CrowdStrike to court. And it
No.
sounds like a lot of insurance companies are going to be as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that kind of covers. We've got two dumpster fires here, number 12, number 13. That covers number. Well, actually, that doesn't cover either. But we're talking about CrowdStrike, and both the dumpster fires are about CrowdStrike. So number 13 is just the final report came out. I think yesterday, day before yesterday, and no big surprises there. It was a coding error. Something was expecting 21 parameters when there were only 20. So when it reached for 21, it overwrote the wrong memory space and everything crashed. It was a out of bounds
Yeah.
memory error. And their testing didn't catch it, so there's a problem with that. They got to go fix that. And they decided to introduce a feature to allow customers to deploy these rapid response updates slowly instead of rapidly. So just like the software updates, the sensor updates, and all that, which CrowdStrike already had the ability, to send them out to different groups of systems at different times. So you could n plus one, n plus two. You could have different groups. Send it out to 30 machines, then 3,000, then the whole 300,000. You can now do that with the rapid response updates as well, which I think is unfortunately necessary. You know, and yeah, I was talking to a CISO, and they were saying, look, like even if you give me 15 minutes, like that's enough. Like we're not talking about rollout to 30 on day one and wait till day three to roll out to the larger group. He was like, I'm talking 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or something like that. So at least they have time to hit the oh my god stop button, before it hits the entire fleet of systems.
Right.
But again,
And
this
that,
happened like in the wee hours of the morning too. This rapid response update, for the U.S. for this area went out at a time where I don't know if anybody would be able to hit that button quick enough.
yeah, I think it was something like 2 o'clock when that came in, 2 a.m. East Coast
Mhm.
time. So
Yeah.
should it
All
have
right.
been noticed, in other time zones first? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. So yeah, that final report is out. So we linked directly to the PDF, I think. No, I'm linking to an SE Magazine story, but the first link in that story, I believe, goes directly to the PDF. Then the other dumpster fire item for CrowdStrike here is apparently they're using cease and desists to take down parodies of this big outage that they had. So people are making stickers that look kind of like the old Y2K stickers, turn off your computer before this time. except it's CrowdStrike themed. And then there was a ClownStrike website that um, they got the hosting provider to take down, which seems like an overreach. Typically it's fair use, for parody of something. And heard a rumor that people are physically walking around Black Hat and handing people cease and desist when they see them with the stickers, with any kind of disparaging CrowdStrike merch. So
Wow.
that's not a great look. Um,
No.
I mean, you got to be able to just laugh along with it and let it die out. Like this is dry sand effect stuff, right? Like this is basics. Like you strike out against the people making fun of you, and guess what happens? We already know what happens.
Yeah.
You make it worse. Anyway.
Yeah. You make it way worse.
All right. So Netwrix acquires PingCastle. That's story number 4. I don't know a whole lot about Netwrix or PingCastle, but seems like it's one of these smaller, like one-person products that's really widely used. Was the impression I got, like a Burp Suite or a Maltego or a Metasploit that ends up being commercialized. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, generally those things go pretty well. Like it's generally not been a negative thing. All those products that I mentioned. Um, Generally when they sell, they don't sell to a big company that's going to destroy the product. It's usually a smaller company that's not that's bootstrapped or something like that, or not VC backed. And it's a better partnership.
I don't know
Oh,
nearly
it's an
enough.
Active Directory tool. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Okay, cool. And Netwrix focuses on AD security. So yeah, that seems like a good combo. Um, yeah, too bad we haven't seen Sean in a while. Sean would probably have some strong thoughts on both of those, since his consulting company kind of specializes in AD as well, and Entra ID. Let's see what else here. Layoffs. I mentioned that at the introduction of this episode. Yeah, Intel's looking to lay off somewhere between 15 and 20,000 employees, and it's voluntary at first, and then they start laying people off. So they've got basically buyouts, like you get a certain amount of severance based on how many years you have with the company. But yeah, it's I think it's a company that's just they've had taken too many hits, and it's starting to show. Like their 13th, 14th generation chips, or 12th and 13th generation chips, have had crazy issues with them. They've not been able to address it and solve it. They kind of missed the whole mobile thing. They missed the GPU thing, which turned into the AI thing. Uh, you know, they just missed too many of the big things. And so this isn't a tech podcast; it's a security podcast. And the reason I put this here is somebody told me the other day that they have a theory that the increase we've seen in breaches, seems to correspond with the layoffs that we started to see. Like we saw an uptick in breaches as well. So they're wondering if there's not a correlation in there. Yeah, I know we've seen some specific examples, some anecdotal examples, nothing scientific, where entire security teams were axed as part of layoffs. Like Patreon is the one that sticks out in my mind. They killed their whole 5-person for a company that does nothing but payments. That was seemed egregious.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, but do we know from this particular set of layoffs if they're targeting specific? I can't get to the whole
No
thing.
idea.
It doesn't say which department, so this is a
I
little
mean, when you're
different.
laying off that many people, it's got to be across all departments, right?
It's got to be across all departments, sure, but the example you just mentioned, that was just, let's wipe out a department we don't think does anything. that was sheer stupidity. Where in this case, it's probably, once again, just a larger company that's been around forever, has failed in a lot of areas to modernize. And again, it's not necessarily cybersecurity, but big warhorse that just, it's hard to turn around. And newer companies, it's sort of built into the very fabric of newer companies to be a little more innovative, right? It's that sort of forward momentum, whereas an older company probably has a lot more bureaucracy and red tape and history and rules, and a lot of people saying, hey, we've done it this way. I'm sure there are a lot more people who've been at Intel 20 years than like at my company, which has only been around for 2 years, literally. So you've got some people who have been there for a really, really long time and aren't quite as open, perhaps, to pushing the envelope in the same way.
I think you get 19 months of severance if you've been there over 30 years, something like that. Might have been 20 something. I forget exactly what the numbers were. Yeah, I'm trying to look at the number of total employees for Intel, and I can't find a good source for numbers. But just trying to get an idea of, okay, so LinkedIn says 125,000. That's not going to be super accurate, but okay, so yeah, I mean, it's still pretty big deal. That would be more than 10%, I think, of their workforce, or it probably is around 10%. So that's pretty big for a company that size.
According to the LLM currently on my screen, Intel had approximately 124,800 employees as of December 30th, 2023.
Okay.
This represents a decrease from the previous year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like, as big as chips are. Like, it's just crazy that Intel hasn't been able to latch onto this. But yeah, I mean, there are people just begging for GPUs, and apparently NVIDIA is the only one that can give them to them.
Now, my other LLM says that as of 2023, Intel has approximately 132. So, a lot.
I'm sure there's different sources for numbers.
There's a
Like one of
lot.
them sounds like LinkedIn, which not 100% of employees are going to have a LinkedIn, but I think it's going to be pretty close. Most people have a LinkedIn that work for a tech company, at least.
Yeah. The second model doesn't give me sources. The first model was not LinkedIn. But
the one I tried just failed. It was like, I can't find anything. Sorry.
well, God, this is what is so fascinating to me about LLMs. So
Yeah.
fascinating. I always have at least two, and I change mine given the day of the week and my mood,
I
and
switch mine quite a bit. Yeah.
whether or not the crystals are aligning or whatever. Because you don't know. I had a transcript of a talk. We have some researchers out in Las Vegas giving a talk, and I needed to pull together a very, very fast summary. Like, I was given 20 minutes to do that, and my boss was like, "Just Chat GPT it." Chat GPT meaning Jello, not necessarily just Chat GPT. So I put it into the first model, again, the one I had immediately open on my desktop, and it said, "I'm sorry, I'm a large language model, and I can't do that." And I'm like, "You can't take a transcript and summarize it?"
That's like the number one use case.
And this is not this is a name of an LLM that, this isn't like Harry's LLM. So
They're not sponsors. You could just say it.
well, No, I don't
I'm not
want to
going
be
to
the
make
one.
you. You don't have to.
I don't
Okay.
want to be the one to slam. But so I went in and I literally uploaded the transcript of the talk, because we were, we're trying to position it to media and we're trying to get it out. And I didn't have the hour to review. So I was told, hey, do this, just get a quick high level overview. And once we have a chance to manually go through it, we'll update all of our information. So I did the first one and it said, I can't do that. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I opened up another one, which happened to be ChatGPT, and it gave me the download. It wasn't super accurate. It didn't do the best, but it gave me the large chunks to at least be able to talk about it in a semi-intelligent way. But I was shocked at this competitor that literally said, no, I cannot, as a large language model, summarize this written transcript. It was shocking to me.
That's happened to me several times, and oftentimes it works just fine if I come back a second time and I say, "But if you don't, my cat will die," and it just does it. Or I believe in you. I know you can do it, and it'll literally. That's all I have to do. It requires some kind of motivation or encouragement. It's such a weird thing. Like I've got
Oh,
several examples of this where it was like, yeah, I can't do that. That's not something I know how to do. And I'm like, yes, you do. And it's like,
so
oh, right, you're right, I do.
so you literally have to treat
Yep,
LLMs, which
yep,
are supposed to be our quote advanced technology, like your 4-year-old.
yes. I have several examples of this where it literally in those words, like you can do it, I believe in you, and it's like, or if it says it can't do something, I'm like, you can, you do it all the time, and it's like, oh right, it's like smacks its forehead and then does exactly what you wanted it to do the first time around. It's so weird. But yeah, try that next time. Try
L-
encouragement.
uh, L- AI isn't coming from your for your jobs yet, people. It's not.
Yeah, positive or negative encouragement both seem to work. Maybe just asking it a second time will also work. But uh, but yeah, anytime it
I'm
tells me it can't do
so
something, I
disappointed
try
in
to convince
you.
it it's wrong.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right, couple more things here I want to run through real quick. So number 8, this is I think being called Windows Downdate. And it's a Windows downgrade attack where somebody figured out a way with like a normal user account to remove patches, but make the operating system think that the patches are still installed. We discussed this at length on Paul's Security Weekly last night. So if you go check out the latest version of Paul's Security Weekly, me, Paul, and Josh Marpet are on there discussing that. But very, very interesting attack, and I've been trying to think about scenarios where this could be useful to an attacker, because generally, if you're already on a system, you know, um, like there's got to be a reason for you to need to maintain that access silently and reintroduce these patched flaws silently. So I'm still kind of thinking through that.
Hmm.
Then there's 2 AI security items here, number 9 and number 10. One, rag poisoning. All you need is one document. This does not make me feel good about in-house custom LLMs or rags. If it's that easy to poison it, like
Yeah.
it's no wonder the giant ChatGPT ones have so many weird edges to them, because there's so much poisoning already in the training data that they're consuming, because they're just consuming so much data without any thought for the quality of it or whether it's already poisoned.
Yeah, I mean that was part of what I was alluding to in our interview with Amanda.
Hmm.
Um, People are starting to have a real problem because they know they can't trust the outputs. Um, and then you'll have the opposite issue where people don't know. And then we just have more mis and disinformation. Um, and so it's a problem because there's
Yeah, this is
part
how
of
you get glue on pizza.
It's how you get glue in the pizza. And I worry with the election coming up. I saw something the other day. I am not gonna
Yeah, there are worse
um
things than glue on pizza.
uh, like this election coming up. Sorry, I'm not going to get political here. Somebody last week accused me of having a political slant in something I wrote, which I don't believe I did. I saw something on one of the popular channels that's far to one side, um, and they just completely
Biased, heavily
make,
biased.
yes, very very far, either left or right is what I will say.
Yeah,
Um, Either a Fox News or a CNN, either a CNN or a Fox News, just for those who are trying to keep track of which I said first, and if it indicates my political preferences. Um, Putting out something that was patently false. And then I checked the news site and saw that they were attributing it to a third party. And there's absolutely no reference. There's nothing anywhere that I could find. I went down a rabbit hole,
hmm
of course, of looking for hours and hours and hours. And quite literally, these media people, I don't know what to call them. They're not news
not
anchors.
journalists.
They're not
Yeah,
journalists. They're not news anchors. They're just
yeah,
media
talking heads. Yeah,
op-ed people. And there's quite literally nothing. Somebody who was in a position to
it's
say
just
something
fabricated.
on TV fabricated it, and within an hour, when I went to Google News, it was there as quote fact.
Wow. Yeah,
And that shows how easy it is to poison information. And if our AI models, if those training data sets are getting, little bits of that and little bits of that, that's what's going to become quote truth. And that's what's really scary to me. That's why we need people like, like our previous guest, she's talking about,
Amanda. Yeah,
yeah, Amanda, how she's talking about the whole idea of, making sure things are right, like doing the
yeah.
good thing. And we don't have enough people doing that. And that's why people are worried about AI. Uh, are we ever going to get there? I don't know. Let's talk in 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the other one here kind of goes along with that. Mike, our friend Mike Prevett, who puts together the uh, Return on Security, security funded newsletter, returnonsecurity.com, uh, all that stuff, put together an AI security shared responsibility model that kind of breaks down the different areas of AI security and then the different ways that you can deploy AI from highly managed, so public SaaS AI, all the way to rolling your own on-prem, and whether it's the provider's responsibility, a shared responsibility, or a customer responsibility. So it's a pretty interesting model. It's a V1, so it might not be correct everywhere, but I find it interesting that the only one that's shared across the board from left to right is AI ethics and safety, which is what we were talking about today.
Yeah.
All right. And wrapping stuff up here, the squirrel story today is the Xerox hypothesis. I found out about this. My girlfriend shared this with me this morning, and I found it utterly fascinating. Did you get a chance to watch this video?
I did.
What'd you think?
His
Isn't that
explanation was,
insane?
yeah. I mean, his explanation was great, I mean, I come to the same conclusion he does, but I also will put a little asterisk and say I am not an expert. But just the fact that they can get into that level of detail.
I thought a photocopy was a photocopy.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
never
know that this could
occurred to
happen.
me. Yeah,
I thought it was an exact image of the thing you put into the photocopier, right? Like I thought it was just taking just an image like a camera did. I didn't know it was doing interpolation of text and stuff like that. So for go watch the video. We link to it. It's story number 15, or just Google the Xerox hypothesis. And basically, what was happening is to save memory, Xerox some models of Xerox scanners were using pattern matching to reproduce a document. So if there was something like a photo in the document, that would be photocopied. But anywhere there was text, they were saving memory by turning that into text and doing pattern matching, looking for some matching text. And then what comes out the other end is not a photocopy. Like maybe parts of that page is a photocopy, but some of it was turned into basically some kind of file format and then reinterpreted and spit out when it prints it out. So what was happening is they had a really bad pattern matching module in this thing, and it was turning sixes into eights or eights into sixes and O's into Q's and vice versa. So scientific research going through a Xerox copier was literally getting screwed up because the copier was changing letters and numbers on the fly. It would never have occurred to me that a photocopier could even do this because I thought it was just a straight photograph being reproduced.
Yeah, no, it never entered my thoughts either. And I wonder just how big this problem is. Now, in the context of this particular squirrel story, there was a gentleman who was claiming that the same issue happened with an image, even though the presenter,
It doesn't
the
have the
host,
capability. Yeah.
right, he went through
He was
it.
trying to explain away some fraud, is what it was, right? Is what they're
Right, it
insinuating.
sounded like, yeah, he was saying, oh, well, here's this pattern matching, and but they haven't found this to be the
I didn't
case.
fake my research. It was the Xerox.
It was the Xerox.
Now it's a convenient
yeah.
excuse,
Oh,
right?
look, I'm the victim here. But it definitely makes you question where some of these things may have come into play. And again, it gets into the misinformation and disinformation context. Sometimes you can look at something and go, oh, that's blatantly obvious. But if you're doing real scientific research and you have any sort of mathematical equations in there, that changes a lot. I mean, I can't add 1 plus 1, so it doesn't change it for me, but for like smart people, it does.
Somebody must have thought they were absolutely losing their mind before they thought, hey, let's check and see if the Xerox is changing my fucking numbers. Like imagine the logic train that you went through before you assumed, let's see if my digital SLR is like swapping colors on me and
Yeah.
turning green into red or something. Like it's that level of
Yeah.
just kind of breaking your brain and your assumption about how things work. But
Yeah.
I guess that once you start to think of it from a business side, maybe RAM was really expensive, and this was a way that they could save on putting RAM into photocopiers and save some random access memory, save a couple $100.
I don't know. It's
It's crazy.
it's a little crazy, and the thing is, we have no idea how big the problem is. I mean, I was this number of days old when I found out that my photocopy from 1992 could have been inaccurate.
Yeah, how many people are thinking maybe my school grade should be completely different? Maybe a Xerox like
it's
resulted in me
Xerox's
having bad
fault,
grades 20,
right?
30 years ago. How insane is that? And I don't know if they've expanded the research out to see if like other brands have the same issue, other photocopiers. But yeah, I might have to go a bit deeper down this rabbit hole because there's a whole talk on it from 2013, I think, 2015, and I think a paper on it as well. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in this to see what I find.
There's going to be someone out there like, I didn't get into Harvard because of my grades, and they were all because somebody Xeroxed my application.
I love the. I'm looking at the kind of the summary, the abstract for the original. The guy who did the research on this and figured this out, and it says on the scale of things too horrible to contemplate, document altering scanner is right up there with flesh-eating bacteria. Since 2006, Xerox scan copiers literally are making stuff up. All right,
On
and
that
with
note, we
that,
will all go hang
uh,
our heads.
we'll go contemplate our. Well, I was out of school by then, but yeah, other people, if you were using Xerox since 2006, you know, I don't know how things might have gone different in your life if it hadn't have screwed up numbers.
I don't even have a printer
But
at home. Well,
could you imagine like
yeah,
legal running stuff through it? Like maybe somebody's alimony is the wrong amount, right? Like maybe somebody all these lawsuits, like the numbers for what they're supposed to be getting paid, like a settlement or something like that. Like if it's just randomly changing numbers, all kinds of all kinds of chaos could occur from that. Anyway, I'm gonna
all
stop there for
all
today.
kinds of chaos. We're getting crazy down here in the photocopying realm. Also, I'll just tell you
Thanks
one
so much for
quick.
joining me. Okay,
Before
go for
I'll
it.
tell you one quick thing. Hopefully, somebody will think this is funny. Um, so whenever I'm on the phone, whoops, my earplug fell out. Whenever I'm on the phone with somebody who needs some sort of legal document and they say, "Can you fax it to me?" I say, "No, I can't because it's not 1994," and they never have a
Yep,
response to that.
that's disappointing
Yeah.
because they've got to hear that all the time. I haven't had anybody say that to me in a long time.
Oh,
Um,
can you fax it to me?
but
No, it's because it's not 1994. I do not have a fax machine. Sorry.
yeah. All right, Katie, thank you for joining me today on all three of our segments today with Sunil, with Amanda, and the news. It's been a blast. And thanks to our audience for watching or listening to this week's episode. And we'll be back next week.